Last time the U.S. blundered into wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it squandered over $7 trillion and lost more than 7,000 American lives. Iran stands ready for dialogue based on mutual respect and interests. But if pushed, it will defend itself and respond like never before. Do we really want to test these guys? There are thousands of men all across the region, Shia, who are signing up for their martyrdom, saying, whatever needs to be done, if it is our martyrdom, we will do it. This could get very ugly for the United States very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. The Zio Trump slop administration is on full red alert. The sirens are running and they say, everyone get out on Fox News, do your Fox News hits, call for war in Iran, convince the American public that we need to do this. What do we need to do? Well, according to Marco Rubio, we need to put the lives of some 30 to 40,000 U.S. Personnel in the region in grave danger so we can launch a war on Iran that has no, I guess, stated goal or purpose or plan in place. As I reported on our last stream, folks, there's a new report which indicates what we all kind of knew but didn't exactly have proof of, which was that on January 14th, there was actually a plan in place, in motion, about to go into effect to strike Iran on the 14th. And that didn't happen because apparently, according to the news, there weren't enough U.S. military assets in the region, which, I believe that story because now we've seen an increased supply of U.S. military assets, the likes of which we've never really seen before. They said that they didn't have a plan in place. They didn't have a proper, goal in mind on the 14th. Apparently, it took them, 14 more days to plan all of this and do this. And they've now managed to come up with their great idea because we're about to witness war, all right? Because everyone is going out now on Fox News and saying stuff like this.
Let's start with the idea that Donald Trump is Reagan plus. He's a man of peace, but not to be trifled with. So what did he tell the protesters? Keep protesting. Help is on the way.
He's a man of peace. Bro's still talking about the protests. Unk's still talking about the protests. Protests been done. Protests been done. Unk's still talking about the protest. Why are you still talking about the protests? Hasn't it been like weeks? Am I tripping, or has it been weeks since those protests were taking place? Wasn't it on like what was the crazy date of the protest? Wasn't it like January 8th and 9th or something were the crazy days? Am I misremembering again? Like how Nick Fuentes said I was misremembering about me being taller than him, and then I had to provide photos to fact check it. Because apparently Nick Fuentes is some walking giant, and I couldn't possibly be taller than him, even though we did the fact check. We ratioed him last night. Everyone saw, but that maybe I am misremembering this time. In actuality, and the protests were far more recent than I remember.
I hope he can find a deal to end the bloodshed in Iran. But Iran's the largest state sponsor of terrorism. They've killed probably 30,000 of their people.
By the way, the EU has now agreed to recognize the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, as a terrorist organization. So what I was saying some weeks ago, right? Because some weeks ago, we saw during the protests that like virtually every single EU embassy, every single EU foreign ministry called upon the Iranian ambassadors in their respective countries to come and get publicly shamed by, the respective governments. And I said, oh, wow, what it looks like is happening is, it's not just going to be the U.S. and Israel this time that join in the bunch and launch this operation against Iran. It's going to be not just the U.S. and Israel and the U.K., it's going to be all of Europe. And we kind of got further proof and vindication of that theory when Trump leaked the text messages from Macron, which said, Trump, what are you doing about Greenland? Don't be stupid. We've done such great work together in Venezuela or something. And he said, we could do great work together in Iran, too. What are you doing? You're going to screw everything up. So, that's the idea here.
And here's what I think. When Donald Trump promises you something, he will deliver. To the Iranian people, President Trump has your back. Help will be on the way. I'm not going to say any more. Let's start with the idea.
I'm not going to say anymore. German Chancellor Merz says Iranian regime's days are numbered. It may be weeks, but this regime has no legitimacy whatsoever to govern the country. Oh, that's interesting, coming from the country who in the most recent elections, someone somewhere decided to unalive, I think it was 7 AfD members in the regional elections in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany because they were slated to have huge margins of victory there, and 7 of the AfD candidates were killed under extremely suspicious circumstances. Germany, who's on life support right now because they have no cheap energy, because they sanctioned themselves away from the cheap energy in Russia, and now they have to buy expensive energy, and now their entire economy is collapsing. That Germany says that Iran's days are numbered. Really so interesting. Okay, now let's take a look here. Donald Trump gave a Truth Social post, diplomacy by Truth Social from Donald Trump here. This is what he had to say, okay? A massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. I'm going to call BS on that. Can't imagine that the U.S. troops on board any of these U.S. carry strike groups are all that enthusiastic right now. Sure, maybe actually some of them are enthusiastic, but I would imagine that some are a bit worried about the possibility of Iranian martyrs simply not caring about what the U.S. does, what the U.S. thinks, what the U.S. threatens, and possibly, there could be U.S. troops that will be harmed and or unalived. That is a very sincere possibility. And, these young guys on these ships, they have TikTok, they have Twitter, they know who they are going to possibly be unalive for. And that is Netanyahu, that is BlackRock, that is Rothschild Bank that wants to come in and set up operations in Tehran. These young men are literally going to die so a Four Seasons can be built in the mountains of Tehran where they currently store thousands of missiles. And so some bimbo Iranian diaspora chick who's living in Orange County, California, can go on her mountain resort trip to the Four Seasons, Iran, and be sipping on like some alcoholic hot chocolate beverage at a Four Seasons in Iran. That's effectively what they are going to be dying for, okay? But anyways, let's keep reading on. We don't even need to mention the fact that these ships are all breaking down and they're not doing so hot and they were falling apart in their operations in Yemen, probably Venezuela as well. We can skip over that because everyone knows that. Like with Venezuela, it is ready, willing, and I skipped a sentence. It is a larger fleet headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln than that sent to Venezuela. A grammatical error, Mr. Trump. Like with Venezuela, it is ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with speed and violence if necessary. Hopefully, Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons. One that is good for all parties. Now, that's not actually what he has been asking. That's not actually what he has been asking. He has been asking for no nukes, no ballistic missiles, of which Iran has tens of thousands. And also, they have crazier missiles maybe even than the United States does, okay? I mean, they do. They don't have ICBMs, but maybe they have ICBMs, who knows? Maybe they have nukes, who knows? But maybe we'll all get a North Korea surprise. We'll get Khamenei, it's like that Kim Jong-un video where it's like it's the Blade Runner soundtrack and he's looking at this giant nuclear weapon being launched. It's like maybe we'll get a North Korea, Kim Jong-un, Blade Runner, Khamenei surprise. But I don't know, probably not, but maybe. But he also said no ballistic missiles. The U.S. doesn't even have hypersonic missiles, right? We don't even have hypersonic missiles. And he also said no enriched uranium. Iran cannot enrich their uranium. So like hypothetically, Russia could store enriched uranium in Russia on Iran's behalf. And it could be, very, very strictly monitored and brought to Iran, but Iran can't do any of the uranium enrichment on their own. They can't oversee their own facilities and whatnot. So they couldn't even potentially enrich uranium for their own agricultural needs or medical needs or energy needs, right? That's what he's actually asking for. It has nothing to do with no nukes. That's just the propaganda line here. Now let's continue on. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't, and actually they did, right? JCPOA, but Trump removed that deal. He forced the U.S. out of that deal. Europe stayed in the deal. Trump pulled out of the deal because he claimed that Iran was working with, Salafist, jihadist extremists. He said that they were working with Al-Qaeda and ISIS, despite the fact that now Trump says Iran is a Shia theocracy. And we all know that Shia and ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they don't mix too well together. And then Trump assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the man who was fighting ISIS all throughout the region and fighting Al-Qaeda throughout the region. So yeah, the story doesn't add up. But again, skip over that, ignore that. Okay, we had major destruction of Iran in Operation Midnight Hammer. Cope maxing. The next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen again. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, if you are hoping right now that we have a response from the Iranians regarding this exact Truth Social post, well, I'm here to make your wishes come true, folks. Here we go. Iran says, last time the U.S. blundered into wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it squandered over $7 trillion and lost more than 7,000 American lives. Iran stands ready for dialogue based on mutual respect and interests. But if pushed, it will defend itself and respond like never before. Do we really want to test these guys? Do we really want to see if they're as forgiving as Vladimir Putin? Really want to take that risk? Look, I'll be honest with you all. You can only push a person so far. You can only push a person so far. If you want to know why, the Saudis and the Qataris and why all these countries, maybe even the Jordanians are freaking out so much. If you want to know why these countries are all freaking out so much, but in particular the Saudis and the Qataris, you want to know why? It's because they know for a fact that probably for starters, U.S. military assets will be targeted, and thereafter, oil, gas infrastructure is going to be targeted. That's if it gets to a certain height of escalation. To be clear, I don't think that's going to be the first step. Maybe it will be. I don't know. I'd be surprised. But if what we're seeing is true, if this is going to be initially centered around the Strait of Hormuz, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen in the next story. But I think initially what we're going to see is a lot of action in and around the Strait of Hormuz, possibly a blockade. Possibly they'll try to run the blockade, and that could set off the eventual war. All right. That's what I kind of think is going to happen. But anyways, so Iran's foreign ministry has given further statements. This is to Tasnim from the deputy foreign minister under Aragachi. There are currently no negotiations with Washington, but messages are being exchanged. Even if we sit with Washington for negotiations, this will not reduce our preparedness for any possible war. Any limited American attack will be met with an appropriate response. Our priority is not negotiations with Washington, but full readiness to defend our country. They have learned from their mistakes. Foreign Minister Argacchi says, I have had no contact with the American envoy, Steve Witkoff, over the past few days, and we have not requested negotiations. It's impossible to talk about negotiations in an atmosphere of threats, and the United States should understand this. Negotiations have rules and should be based on equality and mutual respect. Okay? Furthermore, we have news. Oman is the main interlocutor between U.S. and Iranian diplomacy negotiations, messages being sent. And according to Axios, this is citing figures from the United States. They confirmed that no serious negotiations are ongoing. And also they cite word that all exchanging of diplomatic messages through Oman has stopped. Iranian official Mehdi Mohammadi says there is no such thing as a limited strike. Iran is prepared for a long-term confrontation, fighting to make this the last war. Threats against leader Khamenei alone are enough to expand the conflict beyond Iran's borders. Of course. You know, and what you need to understand is a blockade is an act of war. Now, who will pull the trigger and launch the first missile? We have yet to see. We have no knowledge, right, of what's actually going to go down. But if the United States, if Trump says we're going to do a naval blockade, Strait of Hormuz, we're going to do a naval blockade, okay, that will be tested very quickly. I would imagine, you got to understand right now, like, there are thousands of men all across the region, Shia, who are signing up for their martyrdom, saying, whatever needs to be done, if it is our martyrdom, we will do it, right? This could get very ugly for the United States very, very quickly. Very, very quickly, okay? This is the future of the Islamic Republic. You don't amass all of these ships, all of these planes, all of this military hardware just for gunboat diplomacy. I like this IRGC commander, Navy Commander Ali Reza Tangsiri. He said the Persian Gulf belongs to Iran and its neighbors. It's time for America to get the hell out of our region or face the consequences. He's basically saying, like, look, Trump, you want to say Venezuela, Western Hemisphere is yours? You can go kidnap President Maduro? Okay, well, the Gulf belongs to us and our neighbors, so get out. Simple as. We kind of covered this story yesterday. This was funny, but there's more information here. So Iranian advisor to former commander confirms the U.S. did ask Iran to go easy if the U.S. did some symbolic strikes on Iran. And he said Israel and the U.S. sent Iran these messages. Both were rejected. Take this with a big grain of salt, but if you add up all the stories from Israeli, Iranian, and Arab media, it adds up to something close to this. In the past 2 weeks, 2 important messages were sent to Iran, both of which were rejected by Iran. One was from the U.S. and the other from Israel. Washington's message to Tehran was that a limited attack would be carried out and that it must be accepted or face only a symbolic response. Tehran, while rejecting this request, announced that it has redefined its war rules and red lines and considers any attack as a full-scale war. Israel's message to one of the intermediaries was that it would not participate in the attack, and the U.S. attack in Iran was asked not to target Israel. This request was also met with a negative response from Iran, which explicitly stated that with the start of U.S. military action, Israel would be attacked. Netanyahu's recent threats are in this context. We've also seen threats, reciprocal threats from Iran saying that Tel Aviv will be targeted. In fact, at the same time, Iran sent a message to all countries in the region from Baku to Riyadh that any attack from the land or air of these countries will lead to an attack on them. Okay, so now this is actually kind of interesting and will be the end of this story. So we're going to cover another story about Iran, but this is why I find this interesting if it's true, right? And I do believe it's true because we've seen it from so many sources now that the U.S. said they wanted to do a symbolic attack and have, at the very most, a symbolic response in return, but basically just leave it at that. Right. The reason why I actually think that could be true and actually, would have been maybe the best case scenario for the U.S. empire, the imperialists, is because if you actually think about it, okay, you have these protests. If you're the U.S., you think, okay, government weak. Yeah, the protests started out with some people upset about the economic situation. We had the devaluing of the currency tied with Netanyahu's meeting in Mar-a-Lago, and then Mossad began backing all these rioters, violent terrorist antics, burning down mosques, banks, besieged centers, police centers, government buildings, storefronts, you name it, firing at civilians in the streets, firing at besieged workers, firing at security officials, 60,000 guns intercepted, thousands of Starlink intercepted. You get the idea. They think they've done all this work. Now, if we launch a war on Iran, that's just going to unite the Iranian people behind the government yet again. What they kind of miss out on is that the Iranian people are already united because now it's been outed as plain and simple. Mossad was behind these riots. Everyone saw what happened. everyone went out and rallied for the government in much larger numbers. So the Iranians are already united. But if you're Trump, if you're stupid, if you're retarded, if you're getting hand-fed your missions from Assad, you think, okay, well, the Iranian people are divided. If we strike them hard, they're going to be, government will be vindicated. The people will unite. So let's do a limited symbolic strike and ask the Iranians not to respond, which will make us look strong, the government look weak and unable to deal with their own problems, further dividing the people. That's their 4D chess, that's their 1D chess move that they have planned. I could see why they would want to do that, given probably the lack of legitimate information they have at their disposal as a result of the fact that has all been siphoned out of the intelligence reports prepared for Trump on his desk every morning, I'm sure. But regardless, none of this is going to divide the people. Big strike, small strike, blockade, no strike, blockade, strike in a week, strike today, drone strike, submarine strike, missile strike, B-2 strike. Doesn't matter. The people are going to unite around the government because they understand what's going on. That's just the truth. And Iran has given full warning that this is going to be a big response if, in fact, the United States decides to carry out this operation. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.